On Tech News Today, Google's now a car maker, plus Microsoft demos a universal translator. Amazon goes to war against a major book publisher, and Intel gets into the fashion business. All that and more coming up right now.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, May 28th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by Citrix ShareFile. Enhance your workflow. Send files of almost any size easily and securely with Citrix ShareFile. Try ShareFile today for a 30-day free trial. Go to sharefile.com, click the microphone, and enter TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgin.
And I'm Jason Howell.
Tech News Today explores the big stories of the day with some of the world's best journalists. Our guest co-anchor this week is Natalie Morris, a contributor to NBC and co-founder of ReadQuick, a speed reading app for iOS. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you very much.
Glad to have you on today. And this week, we've got some really fascinating news. You know, most of it is actually coming from the Code Conference, which is put on by Recode, the same people who put on the Old All Things D conference. And, you know, Natalie, I think Twit ought to send some people to this conference next year. It's a real newsmaker.
Yeah, I think so. We're getting into the conference season, so I can clear my schedule if Twit wants me to go anywhere. I'll do that.
Yeah. The fact that it's in Rancho Palos Verdes, I believe it is, in California, is a lovely this time of year and probably all year. So, yeah, I'll go there as well. That'll be a great conference for all of us. We'll do the whole show from there. We'll bring Jason and the whole TriCaster with us.
Oh.
Road trip.
Yeah. Couple of hedge clippers, and we'll just rip that thing right out of the ground. Great idea.
There we go. I've traveled with Jason before. He's a good road trip fellow.
I'm an okay road companion.
He's okay. He needs a lot of leg room on the plane.
That's true.
Otherwise, he doesn't get in your way.
Here on Tech News Today, we're already learning things. We've already learned that Jason is an excellent road companion. Good to know. Well, speaking of road companions, Google is now a car maker. The company unveiled a self-driving car and prototypes, basically, that are designed and built not by some car company, not by the Prius people at Toyota, but by Google X Labs. Google said in a blog post that they're planning to build about 100 of these cars. Jack Stewart writes about transport technology for the BBC, and he joins us here now. Welcome, Jack.
Hello.
Jack, can you describe Google's self-driving car physically for our audio listeners?
Yeah, I think the word that really sums it up, and the word that they use too, is cute. They've designed it to look as unthreatening as possible. I think the idea here is to make it as acceptable as possible in urban environments. You know, if we see these cars rolling around like this by themselves, no driver in them, you perhaps would be a little more intimidated to see a big white SUV like the company uses now than one of these little funny little cars. They almost look like a golf cart at the moment. They have a spinning sensor on the top, small wheels pushed right to the corners. And then the company says the front is designed to be particularly pedestrian friendly. So it's got some sort of foam padding material at the front. The windscreen's made of a flexible material. So I guess if the very worst case should happen and this car should hit a pedestrian, then it will hopefully mitigate some of the damage.
And the
Dark Knight, the Batmobile does self-drive as well, but you're right, that would be too intimidating, right?
And probably not very pedestrian friendly.
Exactly.
No, I think that would actually kill someone, especially with the flamethrowers.
The Batmobile's pedestrian friendly in the sense that it kills you instantly, and so there's no suffering before you die. So, you know, and it's a good idea to keep it pedestrian friendly and also friendly looking, because this is kind of a scary thing. This is a challenging concept for people, I think. Don't you think, Jack? I mean, you can imagine a scenario where Google wants to make these legal, and of course they do, and they're working with governments across the United States and around the world to make these eventually legal. But it would have to be significantly more safe than a car driven by a human being in order to be acceptable by the public, don't you think?
Yes, but interestingly, that's not a huge challenge because cars driven by humans are, in fact, hugely unsafe. Human error accounts for 90% of all road traffic accidents. So removing that from the equation would actually make these cars a lot safer straight away. It's interesting, we're seeing a bit of video here of the car in action that Google released. And one of the things that struck us watching it was the type of people they featured in this video. It's a lot of elderly people. There's a couple of blind people, I believe, in here. So they're really stressing how these vehicles could help with mobility for people who just can't drive themselves. People who, for one reason or another, can't get behind the wheel could actually get behind the on-off button, I suppose, you would have in one of these cars and get where they need to go.
Now, here in the Bay Area, we see self-driving cars by Google every once in a while going down the freeway. There's a person behind the wheel, and they tend to be regular, you know, sort of right out of the factory kind of cars that have been retrofitted for self-driving. What's the point of building a car from scratch? What was wrong with the retrofitted prototypes?
Yeah, so the current vehicles, they started with Toyota Prius vehicles and then moved on to Lexus hybrids. So those are the ones you sometimes see around Silicon Valley now. These new vehicles, the company hopes, will be a technology test bed. So they'll really allow them to sort of rethink this whole idea of what it means to have a car without a human driver. The current vehicles, they're having to modify a car that was built for human input, a car that has a steering wheel, that has pedals, that has all these human-centric controls. In a driverless car, you don't need any of those. In fact, their car won't have any of those. It will have them put back in. It will have them sort of retrofitted with steering wheels and pedals to make them road legal so they can test them in California. But ultimately, driverless cars won't need these. And do cars need to be four-seater, or are most of them actually is two-seater plenty? Cars that drive themselves and don't need parking spaces, for example, because, you know, you summon this car on your smartphone when you want it, it drives you where you want to go, and then it goes off and does the same for somebody else. It doesn't spend most of its time parked like a current car. So do they have to look like current cars? Do they have to have the same luggage capacities as current cars? Do they have to have the same crash protection? If they are inherently safer, can they be built lighter and smaller like Google seems to be going for here, and therefore more fuel efficient? So I think it's really an opportunity for the company to start getting at some of these quite basic questions in a sort of a very much a prototype way. But then perhaps, you know, just asking the questions will help some of the answers evolve over time.
But the idea of no manual override seems really uncomfortable, don't you think?
Yeah, it does, because I think we're also used to this paradigm of the way that we drive now. But I actually had a ride in the back of one of the company's current cars last week, the week before, and I was amazed by how quickly I felt comfortable. I was sat in the back because the cars at the moment always have two test drivers, so they sit up front. And it was really no different to being able to relax and accept that a taxi driver was in control of your vehicle. The car drove pretty smoothly. It seemed to be able to take on board the fact that there were pedestrians around, there were cyclists around. We were driving around Mountain View in California. It's a pretty busy area, pretty busy streets. And I was able to relax and just accept it. And so I wonder how quickly, if we get to experience these cars without steering wheels, how quickly we'll accept them. We already see similar things around, for example, Heathrow Airport in London. They have little transporter shuttles that can take you, I think, just to the parking garage and back, so along a very fixed route and in a very basic way. But no need for a human override beyond a big red kill switch, I suppose.
How do you actually tell the car where you want to go? The prototypes that they have a single button for starting and stopping, but how do you actually say that you want to go to a specific location?
I think, again, these are details that need to be worked out, but the most likely scenario I could see is a smartphone app. Similar to something like Uber at the moment, say you would dial in, tell it where your location is now, and the car would be dispatched to you. You would tell it where you want to go. The car would figure out the best route and take you there, drop you off, pop up with maybe whatever charge there was for that journey, or however this model is going to work, and then go off and do the same for somebody else.
And Google's never been afraid of municipalities. So you can see them, once they start to get this legalized in certain cities, then trying to work with the actual infrastructure of the road as well. So that not only do they know where you are, but they could know the car could then sort of speak to the actual territory it was driving on. If we really want to get futuristic.
Yeah, this is the sort of the other approach to autonomous cars. So Google is very much going down the route of making its car capable of looking out for itself in the same way that a human driver does, so that the car can be plonked down right now in the middle of a town that Google has mapped particularly well. That's one very key thing. They do build these incredibly detailed maps of the areas they want to drive. And then the car can interact with normal traffic. So you don't need this critical mass of connected vehicles, which is what some other people are looking at. There's a big trial going on in Ann Arbor, Michigan at the moment, for example, of 3,000 or so connected vehicles, and they're just normal cars retrofitted with a couple of $100s worth of transmitters and receivers to let the other cars around them know where they are, to let the infrastructure know where they are. And those could also bring big safety benefits. You know, those could tell each other when they're approaching an intersection, or could broadcast if they're about to run a red light with the human driver in control. I think it's probable that we'll see some combination of these two approaches in the final design for any autonomous car that we see on the roads.
Now, Jack Stewart, you mentioned a number of safety features. You said that it's pedestrian friendly. I understand that the top speed of the early prototypes is 25 miles an hour because, of course, with each additional 5 or 10 miles an hour, essentially the risk of injury is kind of exponential. A little bit faster means a lot more dangerous, and so they're keeping it to 25 miles an hour. Kind of reminds me of the Segway limitation, which I believe was 12 miles an hour. Google stepped into some real controversy when they were interviewing some people, being interviewed by some journalists around this car, because they said that not only is it safe for the occupants of the car, but it's safe for pedestrians, bicycle riders, and so on. In other words, they're making a calculation in the event of a crash to automatically try to both save pedestrians and nearby people outside the car and also the people inside the car. Is that a slippery slope and a source of controversy that's going to harm the acceptance of these cars, the idea that they may sacrifice the passengers inside the car, the people who bought the car, to save a group of people on a sidewalk?
It could well be. I think perhaps the idea of designing these cars, instead of this current arms race that we have with vehicle design, where we're all convinced that something bigger and heavier is safer, and it is if you crash into some other big, heavy vehicle. If all the cars on the roads could be replaced with these small ones that didn't crash into each other, then really the only risk would be to other road users behaving unpredictably. So it seems to make sense to make them as pedestrian friendly as possible. I think a lot of that at the moment may just be about trying to make these cars seem as friendly and as acceptable and as non-threatening as possible, though. But some of these ethical questions are very interesting, and they are ones that are going to have to be considered more. For example, if your car is under complete computer control and a cyclist pulls out in front of you, and your car could either hit that cyclist or it could swerve and hit an innocent car coming the other way, but the occupant of that other car might not be hurt, whereas the cyclist might be killed, and the car's trying to make all these calculations. Which should it do? Should an autonomous car ever break the rules? Should it speed if it's safer to get around something? Can it actually break a speed limit? These are questions that even philosophers are looking at the moment. Stanford University is running some big projects trying to figure out how to address these questions. A human driver can always say, I did it in the spur of the moment. I didn't have time to think. I just acted. I swerved, and I missed one thing and I hit another. The designers of these autonomous cars have basically all the time in the world to think about these questions, because they are programming a response to every situation into these cars. So they have to think about these moral conundrums now. I mean, if you ever read Isaac Asimov and his 3 laws of robotics, it strikes me as very similar to that. These cars have to be programmed on their priorities, whether to protect themselves, whether to protect their occupants, whether to protect the people outside.
Well, and when it comes to those kind of hazards in the road, it better be able to tell the difference between like a cow and a cyclist, because I don't want to, be hitting an oncoming car to save a cow.
Yeah, if it's in India, you better hit the cyclist. Cows are sacred.
Priorities around the world.
Yeah, and you also bring up another point for those of you who are freshmen in college. Self-driving car philosopher. Look into it. That's a cool area of study. Jack Stewart, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News today and telling us about Google's new car program.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right. Well, you can find Jack Stewart's work at bbc.com/future, and you can find Jack Stewart on Twitter at Stewart_Jack. That's Stewart_Jack. Well, in a sec, we're going to tell you about a new demo that Microsoft gave that's pretty cool. You're going to really be blown away by what they showed off at the Code Conference. But first, I want to tell you about ShareFile. ShareFile is the secure way to send files over the internet. Last thing you want to do is just grab an attachment, throw it into email, and send it out into the open internet, because the internet is insecure, email is insecure, and attachments are insecure, and they're problematic for other reasons as well. If your attachment is large, a gigabyte or 2 or 3 or 5 or 6, that's too big for most corporate firewalls. You're not going to get through. It's going to be blocked. You may or may not be notified that it's been blocked, and so there's a lot of uncertainty about sending big files around on the internet. With Citrix ShareFile, you can simply upload your file to a secure server and send a secure link, and that gives you all kinds of information and control over that. For example, you can password protect your files for maximum security. You can decide who has access to the files and for how long. You can say how many times they can download it. For example, you can say, I want this one person to be able to access this one file for only 1 week, and they can only download it 3 times. That kind of control is available through Citrix ShareFile, and you want that kind of control and also that information, because when you send a file to somebody, you're going to want to know when they download it, and then you can call them or send them an email to talk about whatever it is you sent them after they've seen it. You don't have to spend a lot of time asking them, did you open it, did you get it, that sort of thing. You know, there are lots of reasons to use ShareFile. One of them is for sending very large files. Another one is for sending files securely. I use Citrix ShareFile for sending all files because there's just no reason not to. It's so easy to use and so pleasant to use. And the benefits are so large that it's just a good idea to never, ever send attachments to email. Just use ShareFile, and all the risks and all the hassles and all the uncertainty of sharing files with other people via email go away. So sign up for our free 30-day trial, no obligation at all. Go to sharefile.com, click the microphone at the top of the homepage, and enter TNT. Remember, visit sharefile.com and type in TNT. Microsoft demoed simultaneous translation in Skype yesterday. During an onstage interview conducted by Recode's Walt Mossberg and Kara Swisher, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella invited a Microsoft exec to the stage to show off a pre-beta app that they call Skype Translator. And it does instant translation just like Universal Translator on Star Trek. This is mainly for use on our planet right here. The app appears to be an alternative to regular Skype, and it provides translated subtitles that appear after about a 1-second delay, followed by a machine speech reading of the translation, so you can also hear it. You can read it and you can hear it. Todd Bishop is a technology reporter and co-founder of GeekWire.com. Welcome, Todd.
Oh, it's great to be here.
So you're at the Code Conference, is that correct? You're there and you saw the demo?
No, I'm actually not. No. But,
okay.
But I'm following it closely, and I've actually followed this technology and Microsoft's efforts to advance this particular area of technology for several years now.
So can you tell us about the technology? Because this is a combination of technologies that have been, as you say, have been around and then applied to Skype. So can you tell us about the technology behind this?
Yes, so Microsoft first demonstrated this publicly, at least in 2012. It was a live demonstration by Rick Rashid, the then head of Microsoft Research, who showed how to essentially speak English and have the program translate his words into Mandarin in his own voice. They had actually taken snippets and examples of his speech and had the computer mimic not only the words that he was saying in Mandarin, but also in his own voice.
I remember that demo. That was really impressive.
That's right. And so this is essentially the next stage of that, not taking it in the person's own voice yet, but showing it in a way that could be applied to just anyone speaking with someone else who speaks a different language. And it's using what is called deep neural networks, which are ways of analyzing acoustics in audio to get accurate voice recognition and then translate that into the other language, both in text and through audio.
Now, the translation wasn't perfect, was it? I mean, they translated for the demo German and English. What do you suppose German speakers thought of this translation?
Well, it's funny. I know that at the conference, Walt and Kara asked some of the attendees who did speak German how it went, and the answer was it was mixed. Microsoft acknowledges that this is early, that they're still fine-tuning the technology. It won't come out until later this year as a beta app for Windows 8, which signifies that they're still quite a ways away from making this something that can apply to any kind of speech among various languages.
And any kind of speech translation software has growing pains. When we hear Google Voice, when they came out, they said, we're going to be kind of funky at first, but we get better as you use us. So is this a similar technology that will learn from its mistakes?
Very much so, and that is Microsoft's hope as they roll this out more broadly to a big audience of Windows 8 users at least, that people will be able to essentially inform the machine and offer their feedback as they go along about how the translation went, and then Microsoft's algorithms can learn from those mistakes and from those successes and get better over time.
And what do you think the use case is for something like this? Because I know there's definitely a need with people working in international groups on projects that, same projects, but different pieces of it being put together, assembled by different teams in different countries. Do you think this is a good way to bridge that gap?
Absolutely. And the advantage that Microsoft has here is the ubiquity of Skype, for the time being, at least. Microsoft is in a position to roll this technology out in a variety of potential applications. The ones that they cited in particular were education, diplomacy, multilingual families, and business. So if they can get the technology right, this is the type of thing that could really change the way business is done for people in different countries and trying to bridge both cultural and language barriers.
Now, this is the kind of thing that Google would do and does do. For example, on Google+, everything from posts to comments can be instantly translated in text form with a simple click of a button. How would you compare Microsoft's technology against Google's? Is one better than the other? Are they both about the same? What do you think about that?
Well, Google has really done a great job of bringing its technology to the masses before Microsoft has. Even if you use something as simple as the Google Search app in the, or the Google Search functionality in Google's iPhone app, it is extremely strong. And I think people who use Google's voice recognition technology see that, and then that can also ripple into the translation technology that they also can apply to that. Microsoft's big struggle over the years has been getting ideas, concepts, technologies out of its research labs into its products. And Microsoft will dispute this. They'll cite many examples where they had lots of successes. I'm skeptical of that. The Kinect is one example where they were able to take their software expertise, apply it to an existing hardware base, and then refine that over time. And it's gotten better and better. But even if you compare the Kinect today to something like the Amazon Fire TV and the approach that Jeff Bezos and company have taken, the Kinect can fall short at times. So the real struggle here for Microsoft is going to be making this something that actually works in the majority of situations for people. And I think that this beta may take a little bit of patience, and it may take a while before the algorithms really learn to the point that it can be ready for the mass market.
Well, I think you hit the central point right on the head, and that is getting things out of Microsoft Research and getting them into products. I've been following Microsoft Research for many, many years. It's always been frustrating. They're kind of like the Xerox PARC of today's world, and I've seen machine translation demos at Microsoft Research years and years ago, demonstrated on really feeble hardware by today's standards, and I've been waiting year after year for them to come out with something major. I hope that Satya Nadella is a leader who's going to be more aggressive in getting things out of the lab and into products. It's a point of controversy at this point, of course, because he's just started, as to whether some of the cooler things that Microsoft's doing and the more open things that they're doing, for example, the embrace of the iPad and this sort of thing, if that's something that begun under Ballmer and Satya Nadella is just in the position to take credit for it, or if there's a new Microsoft here where they're going to really aggressively push the labs and the technology that they're developing, because it's great stuff, and they not only have great technology, they have the right ideas. If you look at their vision videos, they really understand where technology should go. It's great stuff, and I just hope that they can break down those barriers between Microsoft Research and the product world.
And he's well received, don't you think, Todd? It seems like people, no one's really inspired to poke fun at him the way we were with Ballmer.
That's true. He's certainly not the caricature that Steve Ballmer is. And I think Steve Ballmer's bombastic nature worked against him sometimes. And I think people underestimated his intellect. And I think he, at times, did himself a disservice. Satya Nadella goes the other direction. At times, he's a little bit too cerebral. I thought his interview last night with Walt Mossberg and Kara Swisher was at times a little bit too defensive. I was hoping that he would go beyond some of the pat business phrases and technical jargon that he sometimes leans back on to really deliver some insights about his vision for the company. That said, he certainly is in this honeymoon period where a lot of the things that he does will be seen as positive, even more so than they would have been if Steve Ballmer had done the same things.
And if that doesn't work out for him, there's always developers.
Exactly.
Todd
yes.
Bishop, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News Today.
It's my pleasure, anytime.
You can find Todd Bishop's work at geekwire.com and on Twitter at Todd Bishop. Amazon is embroiled in a controversial battle with the publisher Hachette Book Group. The companies haven't been able to reach a deal over the price of books, so Amazon's buying fewer books from the company and no longer taking pre-orders on future Hachette titles. Jason Abrazizi is a reporter for Mashable, and he's here to tell us more about this conflict. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
So what's going on here, Jason? Is Amazon using its monopoly power to blackmail a publisher into accepting unfavorable terms, or is not taking pre-orders for is that actually a rational response to the belief that you may not be selling those books in the future?
Some people think Amazon is using its position and its massive piece of the ebook market to put more pressure on publishers. But these are the kind of negotiations that go on all the time between two companies who are trying to split revenue.
The difference is that if Amazon is a monopoly and you must sell through Amazon in order to survive as a publisher, that's a different scenario when Amazon basically demonstrates their ability to not sell your books. They're essentially, and I'm not, I want to get your view on whether or not they're a monopoly. But if they are a monopoly, essentially you have to sell through Amazon. And if you have to sell through Amazon, you have to accept their terms. That's the problem with monopolies, isn't it? So are they a monopoly, do you think?
Well, they reportedly have more than 60% of the ebook market. So while it's not a monopoly in the sense that they have 100%, at 60%, it's dominant. And it really does put publishers in a difficult position when a company like Amazon, which, kind of has established its position by offering very low prices and operating on very low margins. They make very little off of each purchase because they sell at such scale that when their investors who have become to, get concerned about Amazon's profits and how much money they make start asking for more, that means Amazon has to start leaning on companies like Hachette, and that these, revenue negotiations get a lot more contentious. So yeah, a lot of people do think that Amazon's, dominant market position is playing a big role in why Hachette is, taking such a stand in these negotiations.
Now, is this going to be an antitrust issue at some point? I mean, just back to the monopoly question. Let's say that Amazon ends up with 70% of the market, or 80%, or 90%. There's some percentage at which this is an antitrust issue, and it's really problematic that they're pushing their partners around. And also related to this, I think personally, as you mentioned, that they make very little money on books, and that itself could be considered theoretically an antitrust issue, because what they've demonstrated the willingness to do in the past is to sell books and other products, including tablets, at a loss. And once they've driven out the competition, there seems to be a willingness to raise prices far beyond in individual book categories, such as certain textbook type categories of books, where they've completely wiped out all the competition and then raised prices. So, is there any talk in Washington about taking Amazon to task? Because they seem to get away with a lot more stuff than other companies.
I haven't seen anything publicly from politicians, but there have to be conversations going on behind closed doors looking at the situation, because this isn't the first time that there's been a problem. In 2010, they had a similar situation with Macmillan, where they ended up, dropping some of their books off the website, and over these negotiations. This has been an ongoing problem. It's going to be a problem coming down the line, and until regulators step in and try to figure out a better system, or some sort of arbitrator is able to rule what is fair, we're going to see this go on and on until somebody does step in.
And of course, Hachette is a unit of the French media company Lagardère, and it's also a question as to whether the French government may take action as well. Jason Abrazizi, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News Today and talking about this issue.
Sure thing. Thanks a lot.
All right. You can find Jason Abrazizi at Mashable.com, of course, and on Twitter at Jason Abrazizi, and I'm going to spell that for you. It's JASONABBRUZZESE. Thanks
That's
again.
right.
All right. Thanks again.
A lot.
Intel announced this morning at the Code Conference that they'll ship a wearable computing shirt this summer. Intel's head of new devices, Mike Bell, gave Recode's Lauren Good an exclusive demo of the shirt. According to the video posted on the Recode site, the shirt has conductive fibers and can monitor your heart rate. The shirt comes with a small box that has to be plugged into the shirt to process the data and wirelessly send it to a phone or app. That little box can't be washed with the shirt, but the shirt can be washed in a regular washing machine. Intel's first foray into fashion is just an example Intel built to show off their hardware and software platform for wearable computing. Natalie Morris, this is kind of a funny deal that, Intel of all companies is getting into the clothing business. They're saying that they're going to ship this, or somebody's going to ship this shirt this summer. My concern is that almost all the wearable devices do one of two things. They either measure your heart rate or they're pedometers. There's got to be something in the wearable market that does something else.
Oh, I've seen a lot of baby onesies that are kind of wearables because they send you some kind of alert if the baby stops breathing in the crib or something like that. And they have these kind of sensors,
or if the diaper gets heavy.
Right. Yeah, no, you'd know that. You don't need a computer to tell you that. That's for sure. But I don't know. You know what I think is not so much that they care so much about this specific shirt is they're showing that they are ahead of the curve, because we all criticized Intel for taking so long to get into mobile and realize that that was a space. And now that wearables are starting to emerge as the next thing, they want to show that they're ready too.
Yeah. And of course, Google's recently talked about a smart jacket. So we'll see whether we'll actually get smart clothing. And of course, smart clothing that has built-in battery packs or that has certain types of electronics have been around way out on the fringe for more than a decade. But these have been kind of wacky, sometimes
you see them on
art
ThinkGeek
projects
all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll see to what extent smart clothing actually becomes mainstream. I
think we should see those hats with beers on either side, and then some kind of way instead of just the straw to get you the beverage.
That's right. It uses finely tuned sensors to keep the temperature.
To know when you're
just
thirsty.
Right. Exactly. Right. To tell you when you're thirsty. Just deliver the beer, whether your mouth is open or not. That's what we need. Exactly. Well, if we
I've got so many good ideas on this show.
Well, you guys have a company. In addition to apps, you guys should come out with some wearables.
Wearable beer delivery hats. I'm on it.
That's right.
Let me write that down.
You heard it here first. Well, in a follow-up, we told you yesterday that some Apple users in Australia are saying their Apple products are being hijacked and held for ransom. Their devices are being remotely locked, and demands for payment of $100 are coming through the Find My Phone feature. Apple today published a statement saying that iCloud was not compromised during this incident. That was the assumption based on previous reports that iCloud was the sort of avenue through which hackers gained access. Apple also urged users to change their passwords, and we learned since yesterday that users not only in Australia but also New Zealand, Canada, and the U.S. have all been affected, essentially the major English-speaking countries. And the root cause of the hack has not been found, to the best of my knowledge anyway. It's possible that Apple may know and hasn't said yet. But this is yet just another follow-up to yesterday's report on the Find My Phone hack. Well, Japan SoftBank is now offering a free app that won't let you text or use your smartphone if you're walking down the street. The app is called Stop Aruki Sumahu, which means stop smartphone use while walking. Or it means don't be a dumbass and walk into a telephone pole because you're texting. It works by freezing the screen when the phone detects walking motion. A yellow banner appears as well, notifying you that your phone hasn't locked up. It's just preventing you from texting while walking. I don't think anybody wants this, Natalie. The people who are conscientious enough to install this app are probably the same people who won't text and walk. Who really needs this app are the people who don't care and who tend to walk into fountains and into manholes and open manholes and so on. And these type of apps need to be forced upon them. What do you think?
I don't know. I think I would use this to save me from myself. I've done some stupid things while I've been walking and texting. Things I won't admit to on the show, but I don't know. That extra layer of security, why not?
Come on, you can admit to one of them.
No, I won't.
We break news here on Tech News Today. What have you done?
Things.
What have you done?
Well, I used to live in Manhattan, so I would look at my phone and walk straight into people or tourists or tables full of children's books. I've been known to knock those things over. Manhattan is the worst place in the world to text while walking down the street because the taxi drivers won't even swerve. Right. I was trying to text once and hold an umbrella and walk at the same time. And then I had a coffee in my bag and spilled it all over my brand new dress, which was black and white, so you could see it. I've done stupid things. Dumb things.
You heard it here first, folks. Right here.
But, at least I can admit to it. And so if there were an app that would save me from myself, then why not?
Yeah. Well,
everyone's done stupid things.
Yes, we all need help. And I think, who is it? I think Apple has a patent on a technology that's existed for a while that shows you behind your text messaging or behind your email application what the camera sees. So behind the words that you're typing, you actually see the sidewalk. And so right there on the screen, you see the open manhole cover. So fantastic technology. But you know what? As soon as they make a better idiot-proof device, they build a better idiot. So this stuff is not going to help. Natalie Morris, that is the tech news today. I want to thank you for coming on again today and all week.
You're welcome. I will see you tomorrow.
All right. See you tomorrow. So you can subscribe to Tech News Today at twit.tv/TNT. There is a plethora of ways to subscribe, however you want to get it, RSS, you name it. Join our Google Plus community and also circle our page by searching for Tech News Today on Google Plus. And we want to hear from you. So comment on Twitter or Google Plus using the hashtag Tech News Today. Send us an email at tnt@twit.tv or leave us voicemail by calling 260-TNT-SHOW. Don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight. My name's Mike Elgin. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.